Okay, welcome back, and we'll be taking up from where we left off in the last video. It's Charles once more, and I started this project in the video before the last one, yes, and we actually said we could draw shapes using Scratch, and I wanted to use this project to illustrate the sequence principle in coding. Okay, now the sequence principle is very simple. Okay, it simply says our code is going to be executed or run in the order in which we place the blocks from the top to the bottom. Okay, from the top to the bottom. Alright, now it's a very simple principle. Okay, things get executed in this order, and this is one of the reasons why we advocate for coding. It also helps children be able to think through their decisions on arranging things. It could be a procedure, a process, a list, or a party program, you know. But it helps them think, okay, why should I put this block here? Well, it's quite obvious, because the block is supposed to be the first one that should be executed whenever the program starts. But then why do I need to put hide here? I mean, it makes perfect sense for me to hide the sprite that was here before, so that I have my stage completely free for the shapes to be drawn. Okay, why do I need to go to a particular location after hiding? That's simple. That's because I want to specify where it should be drawn. So right now I'm going to put my mouse over here at the tip of this triangle, and you would see, if you can read down there, that's where the shape started getting drawn. Okay, minus 172. If you look at the lower right corner of my stage, minus 172 109 is exactly where my mouse is right now. Can you see that? Now basically what Scratch did was, after putting the pen down, after setting the pen color and putting it down, putting the pen down, it moved 50 steps in this direction. See that? 50 steps in that direction. And after moving 50 steps in that direction, it turned through 120 degrees. Okay, so if it had been moving straight, it would have been going in the way my mouse is going right now, right? Okay, so that's 120 degrees. But no, I can't keep going in this direction. I need to go through a particular angle so that it can now face this way before it moves another 50 steps from this point to this point. Okay, now if I also need to move 120 degrees to get the next step done. Okay, so after moving 50 steps, I need to move another 120 steps. If not, the pen would have continued drawing it down this way. But we have to turn another 120 degrees this way, so it now faces this direction, and then we now move 50 steps, and there you are. Scratch executes your code exactly how you want it. Okay, now I said in the last video that we're going to see an easier way to go about this. There's another principle in coding that explores patterns. Okay, now patterns are simply things that repeat. Okay, things that repeat. Okay, so when we see similarities, when we see things that keep popping up in our code, we look for ways to make our code shorter and more, we streamline our code, in other words. okay, so that our code would be shorter and more effective. Okay, now I keep using this example. What if I had to draw a shape that had 50 sides? Can you imagine how many blocks we would need here? We're going to need 100 blocks, yes. Just from this point where we have to move 50 steps to the last turn 120 degrees, we would have 100 blocks. I'm not even counting the pen down, the pen set pen color all the way up here. So we would have 100 blocks if we wanted to create a shape that had 50 sides. Okay, you can do the math. All right, now what can you see in this code? I'm sure you can see by now that we're repeating the move 50 steps, turn 120 degrees, move 50 steps, turn 120 degrees, move 50 steps. So because we're repeating these, we can say there's a pattern here. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to isolate the what repeats. Okay, and let's see if we can get rid of this code. Ta-da! See that? All I needed to do was to drag and drop it there. Okay, now I don't want to get rid of this one, so I'm going to leave it right here. Okay, so anytime you don't need your codes, all you need to do is to drag them and move them to where you need them. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is to implement the pattern, or to take care of the pattern we've just created. Okay, now how do we go about taking care of that pattern? Now this is that pattern shows that the move 50 steps and turn 120 degrees gets repeated. Now if you look under the control section, you would see a repeat block. Yes, Scratch gives us a repeat block that helps us to specify how many times we want stuff to be repeated. And now if you remember, I said when I talked about the basic principles of coding, I said there were 3 in number. So we've just looked at sequence. I said you would find that in any code that's written, well-written code. So we've seen sequence. Sequence simply says block 1 on top, the next block follows it, the next one follows it, and it gets executed in that order from top to the bottom, or the top-down principle. Okay. Next, I said there's another principle called the sequence principle. Okay, now the selection principle. Okay, so after the sequence we have the selection principle. Now the selection is the one that gives our program the ability to take decisions, or decide on what next to do based on a condition. We'll come to that in the videos, the next few videos to come. But the one that we want to touch on in this video is the repetition principle. Okay, some call it the iteration principle. Okay, where we find patterns and we explore how to make our codes more efficient by repetition, by taking care of the patterns. So right now I'm going to do that with this. I'm going to put it right here, but I'm going to need to change 10 to 3. See that? And I hit enter, and let's see how our code works now. Okay, now you might think nothing really happened, but let's change the color. Let's see, let's do a green. Okay, now let's do it this time. What did you notice? We have a green triangle. Yeah. Alright, So that's kind of